back. And today I have my special guest. She's a reinvention partner for GenX professionals who are ready to live corporate life and build something of their own. No other than Miss Shelley McIntyre. Welcome, Miss Shelley on Entrepreneurship 101. And can you please introduce more about yourself without I mess?
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, my name is Shelley McIntyre, and I primarily work with people who are trying to leave the corporate world and build something of their own.
Something that they build their own. Mean to say their legacy to the world. So, Miss Shelley, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to us here on Entrepreneurship 101. We celebrate you, we salute you. And today, let's talk about helping Gen X, as you said on the title itself, professional ditch corporate and build what fits. So you said the job was never just a job. For Gen X professionals who were raised to believe that career equals security, respect, and identity, what actually happened inside a person when that equation breaks, not the logistics, the internal unraveling?
Yeah, I think a lot of people when they've been in a career for a long time and they start feeling very dissatisfied, it can be a very confusing time because they get a lot of their identity from their job. So for many years, they've been told you're a valuable person because you're working in this job or you have this particular title or this career. So when you think about doing something else or moving on from this job, it's a difficult calculation because you feel like you're abandoning everything that has made you a worthy person. So you're not just looking at leaving a job, you're looking at rebuilding an identity and getting back in touch with a version of yourself that you like.
Mhm. Well said, Miss Shelley. You borrowing your title as your identity is a powerful phrase. But what is the other side of what title when the vice president of marketing or a senior director of operations let go of the badge? What's left? Why is it emptiness so terrifying that many people stay in jobs they hate for years?
Yeah, I mean, it is really scary to step away from something that has given you a sense of status and belonging, and you can go out to parties or you can network, and it's a very quick shorthand to convey your value to another person. If you say, I'm a vice president of marketing, people kind of generally understand what that means, even if they don't understand what your job actually is. And then if you're faced with leaving, I have a lot of conversations with clients who say that I don't know how to introduce myself anymore. If I can't hang a, a title off of my name, I am Nick and I am a vice president of marketing. What do I say? So if people leave their jobs, do I just say, like, I'm a person who doesn't do anything? So this is it's a very North American culture thing that people introduce themselves with their jobs. And in other parts of the world, that's not true. So I think a lot of people have to figure out what they like and what they like doing and what they like experiencing, because that can be the connection point with other people. So when we say that they're afraid to lose that status, it's really that they're afraid that they won't have something that they can use to connect with other people, and that as a result, they will feel isolated and lonely.
Well said again, Miss Shelley. Stop. Well, not a stop. You've named that living corporate involves grief, real grief for the loss of your old self. Take us into that. And what does that grief actually feel like on Tuesday afternoon when no one's watching? And why do so few people talk about as a grief rather than a career transition?
Yeah, grief can be a really scary word to people. And I think a lot of people associate the concept of grief with mourning the loss of a person who has died. But any big change that we go through involves a sense of loss, even a good change. So if you leave a job, you're going to lose the relationships that you had there. You'll lose your sense of a place, um, and a sense of purpose that mattered to you. You might lose a sense of autonomy. You were probably really good at your job, and that competence is super important just to feel content as people. So you're not just walking away from a paycheck because you lose that too, but you're losing a lot of other things that are really foundational to who you are as a person. And when you just look at losing a lot of things, that has an impact on you, and that impact tends to be grief. So we can experience grief after any kind of loss. And stepping away from a job, even if it's your choice, is a really big one.
A big one indeed. So, Miss Shelley, you specialize in Gen X professionals specifically. What makes reinvention in your 40s or 50s fundamentally different from pivot in your 20s or 30s? What does Gen X bring to the table that younger generation don't? And what unique way does Gen X carry that makes change harder?
Well, just by the nature of being more settled in your life, you might have more financial obligations. You might have a family that's relying on you. And also, like, we get a little less malleable. We get a little less flexible as we get older. And I talk to a lot of people for whom change is very difficult. When you're in your 20s and 30s, your whole life has changed. Everything is changing all the time, and you become very skilled at navigating those changes, even if they feel chaotic. And when you get a little older, the stakes are higher for those changes. And we just kind of get out of the habit of negotiating big changes. We might move, or somebody might die, and it throws us into a big upheaval. So we look at what might be steady in our world and we just want to hang on to it. So if we think our jobs are the thing that is providing us with the steadiness that we crave when other changes are happening around us, losing that job, especially a layoff, can feel very difficult to Gen Xers, people in their 40s and 50s.
Miss Shelley, Gen X is often called the forgotten generations. Luxury kids, divorced parents, early independence. How does that specific generational conditioning show up in your clients' resistance to building something for themselves? And how does it become their superpower?
Yeah, I think the superpower is a really great point on this because this generation grew up very independent, right? A lot of them, you mentioned the latchkey kids. A lot of people in my generation, in the Gen X generation, we were free roaming, we were super independent, we're very resilient. We were working when we were teenagers. And that already is the superpower, that we do know how to be independent and adapt. And if we want to leave the corporate world and build something of our own, we have the tools to do that already. We've always had them. And I think a lot of people that I work with forget that they are so adaptable and that that's been wired into them, because being in the corporate world kind of lets you get a little complacent. So I think Gen Xers are very well positioned, especially when you think that when you consider that new businesses that are started are the most successful when the founders are in their 40s and 50s because they have all this work experience and life experience. They're more settled in their nervous systems. They won't panic as quickly. So there are a lot of advantages for being in the Gen X or 40s and 50s and launching out to do something different.
You work with people who are not looking to retire, they want to build. What's the difference between a Genzer who's genuinely ready to build something new versus one who's just exhausted and needs a break? How can a listener tell which one they are?
Well, they might be the same person, right? You can be burned out and not ready to retire. Um, it's really hard to imagine a future when you're burned out. So, one of the things that I really emphasize with people that I work with is that if you feel like you have a lack of curiosity, if your curiosity is gone, you don't care to build something of your own, you don't want to do something else, but you can't retire yet, it's not a moment to panic because once you get out of the environment that's burning you out, your curiosity will awaken again. And it's not possible to see all of the possibilities for your future life after the corporate world if you're tired and grumpy and you hate what you do every day. You have to get removed from that environment or start planting some seeds outside of that environment to see what you might want to do next. Because a lot of people come to me and say, I don't remember what I like anymore. I don't remember who I am anymore. I don't have any hobbies. And that's a problem because then they have nothing to go toward when they leave the job.
Well said, Miss Shelley. You used the word, a wonderful word, of gazing to describe the weird, wandering phase of reinvention. Paint a picture of what off gazing looks like, what someone does not do, or feels, avoids, on why that phase is actually productive, even though it feels like failing.
Yeah, so I'm specifically talking about usually a 3 to 4 month period after you leave a job or after some huge thing happens that you've had a long build up to, like maybe you know that you're going to be laid off. And there's a 3 to 4 month period where you have had all of this stress build up in your body and you leave the job and suddenly you're free and you think this should be a wonderful time. I've got all of this time on my hands. I could see people, but instead you get sick, you feel kind of dumb, or you feel a little bit drunk all the time. You're not thinking straight. You get confused. Maybe you get into accidents more easily. This is the time period that I call the off-gassing period, and it's the time when your body and your nervous system needs to catch up with the reality that you're in now. Like, you might still wake up automatically at 6:30 in the morning every day and start getting ready for work until you remember that you have no work to go to. Or you might, you know, drive automatically to your old office without thinking about it, and that is a very normal thing to have happen. What I think people get surprised by is they feel a little shame around the off-gassing period because they've been anticipating this time for so long, and maybe they made a lot of plans. I'm gonna travel, I'm gonna go to my exercise class every week, and I'm gonna see all my friends, and none of that is happening. So, what I counsel people to do is just to accept that this is going to be a soft and fuzzy few months, And if they can allow for that to happen and know that it's a normal phase to go through, then they're going to come out of it a little more gently.
Miss Shelley, you're known for saying people don't need to blow it all up to make a change. Give us a three low stakes experiment someone could run next week while they still enjoy or employed, and that would genuinely inform a reinvention without triggering the fear center of the brain.
Yeah. So when I tell people that they can burn the map, and that's my brand,
Mm-hmm.
some of them get a little freaked out because they think, okay, well, I don't like my job, but if I quit, everything will fall apart. And that's not what we're talking about. You can stay in your job and start conducting little experiments to see if something triggers your curiosity for what you could do next. So, for example, if you've been in the corporate world for a long time, you might not really know a lot of people who make a living outside of that world. So the first step is just start talking to people. Find out who you know, or if you have friends who know other people that are in consulting or working part time or run their own business, and just ask them what their life is like. There's no obligation. You're not asking them for a job. Just find out what it's like for people who don't hold down a 9 to 5 job, who are living a little bit differently. So that's one thing that you can do. Just have some conversations. Another is you don't have to like jump in right away to a hobby, but having some kind of hobby outside of work is really important. So the low stakes way to do this is ask your friends what their hobbies are and see if you can tag along to try some things. We have to try things with our hands and bodies to know if we would like it or not. We can't just hear about somebody who plays tennis and decide, I don't think I would like tennis, even if you never try it. So we have to try stuff. And the second low stakes experiment is just tag along with a couple of friends who have hobbies and try the hobby with them before you decide whether you would like to pursue that on your own. And a low stakes experiment number 3 is move your body. A lot of people in the corporate world can get very sedentary. They're sitting for long periods of the day, and exercising or going for walks every day or doing some kind of physical activity will get the juices flowing and open up some creative channels so you can start thinking about the next thing.
Well said, Miss Shelley, and you host the Burn the Map podcast. What is the episode you recorded that made you vulnerable in a way you did not expect? And what did the listeners say back and told you that vulnerability was worth it?
Yeah, I do record the Burn the Map podcast. I just finished episode 38. And yeah, one episode that I keep coming back to is about that off-gassing phase that we talked about and really recognizing that it is a feeling of grief. And that can be a very vulnerable thing for people to admit that they're experiencing a sense of loss even after stepping away from a job that they hated. It's can be a confusing thing to grieve the loss of something they didn't like. But then once they understand what valuable things they were getting from that job, it makes a lot more sense.
Hmm. Certainly. And Ms. Shelley, to wrap up our discussion for today, you offer a free guide called Four Bold Moves for Gensers Dying to Leave Corporate. Without giving away all four, what is the boldest move on that list? The one that makes people catch their breath when they read it.
Yeah, I think the boldest move is to start making your move to conduct these experiments while you're still employed.
Why you still employed? Definitely. So, Miss Shelley, can you please invite our listeners to support your podcast, your business, your projects, or anything you want to promote on Entrepreneurship 101?
Yeah, my podcast is called Burn the Map, and they are very short episodes. They're easy to find wherever you find your podcast. And my website is burnthemapcoaching.com.
Well said. And I have one more question before I will let you go. Miss Shelley, if a listener is a 40 years old and has 20 years in the same industry, is a deeply tired, secretly afraid they're too old to start over, and he's been fantasizing about living for 3 years about has not taken a single step. What do you want to say to them about what's actually possible that they cannot be seen from inside the cake?
Yeah, I think I would say that you're right on time, and you've never been as experienced and adaptable as you are in this moment.
Definitely be adaptable. People, so Miss Shelley, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
Marika, people, see you soon.